My name is Christian Ashley, a seminary student and servant of God, and you are listening to the Let Nothing Move You podcast, a proud Anazal Ministries podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of the Let Nothing Move You podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, as we start the book of Ruth today, continuing on our journey in the Old Testament and the historical books and narratives. We'll be doing Ruth 1 and 2 this time, 3 and 4 next time, and then from there moving to 1 Samuel. But I stress we, once again, because I'm not alone. And I have two wonderful gentlemen, one and a half, some would say, joining us today. First off, the half, Joshua Noel. How's it going, Joshua?
Great. Watching back through Rings of Power right now. So when you say half, I'm going to assume you mean that I'm a Harfoot, and I'm okay with that. So thank you.
Okay. You know what? You got a halfling's heart. That's perfect. You can bear the ring. And of course, also joined today by Karai Rowe. How's it going, Karai? Welcome back to both of you.
Oh man, it goes good. It goes good. Good to be back. We got ourselves a nice little house party of immovables up here. This should be good.
Yeah. All right. So as stated before, we'll be in Ruth 1 and 2. We're starting off today in verses 1 through 5. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So normally this would be where I let everyone else open up, but since we're starting the book, just want to talk real briefly about some things. Ruth, we don't know exactly when Ruth was written. We don't know the author or anything like that, but of course, this allows for speculation. So I'm going to go off on that real quick. Most likely, given the evidence we have, this was written sometime during the reign of King David or perhaps King Solomon, depending on who you ask, as will be evidenced by its ties to the Davidic ancestry in chapter 4. As a result, some people, whenever there's a text like this around the time this is, will negate that idea and say, well, Samuel wrote it, which forgets the fact that, Samuel, and I just have in my notes, I'm sorry, I just realized a typo I put there. I put, it was supposed to be many rabbis. It says many rabbits attribute him as the author.
Correct. Rabbits know everything. Continue.
Oh, that's good Jewish rabbits. But this is unlikely, as I mentioned earlier, because it places such an importance on David's ancestry, given that Samuel dies before he becomes king. However, I will throw a bone to him. Samuel is a prophet, so it is probable that he could have received the vision and included that part in the text as revealed to him by God. However, I believe the more likely option is that a prophet and or scribe within David's court, like Nathan the prophet, who would have had the history, the knowledge it means to get it done, may be our author. At the end of the day, we don't know. So exactly when it was written, exactly who wrote it, no clue. But at the end of the day, it's biblical influence. It's God influence. It's very clear reading through the story here. So I will open the floor to my esteemed guests.
Man, every time I read verse 4, I think, Oprah in ancient Near Eastern, you know what? Never mind. It's Orpah. That's what I think every single time I look at that, bruh. That capital O-P, man.
That's your rabbits.
Gets me every time.
You get a rabbit, and you get a rabbit, and you... Yeah, man. Like, Orpah's name always confuses me. But this book it's short, but it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like people always, I feel like it's the smaller books that get attacked a lot for like whether or not they need to be in the canon. And it's like, bro, like just read it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you read it and, you really see what these smaller books have for you. It's like, oh yeah, they're tiny, but they're needed.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a lot to say, so I'm going to try not to say too much because this isn't my podcast. I will also throw out there that I'm probably the more progressive of the 3 here. I still probably wouldn't call myself a progressive, but for his listening audience, I'm a progressive and a mad bleeding liberal or something. I don't know. But I think, so a few things. When it comes to like the authorship, writer, all that kind of stuff, most scholars think like linguistically, writes as though it was post-exilic. Like if you look at the actual language, how the words are used, it's like that's what they were using during the exile or after the exile for the Hebrew people. But character-wise, stories, all this other stuff, like it just wouldn't make sense to place it during the exile. So that's why there's like just a ton of debate when this might have been written. I'm actually okay with the idea that it was like Davidic times. For me, I really feel like my Pentecostal roots will show a little bit of like, if God wanted us to know, we'd know. I guess he doesn't want us to know. So cool. I think when you think of like, a lot of times the context helps us figure out like why the story is important. What's it saying to the people? I think a few things. It places itself in the context of Judges during one of those like, oh, the people are sinning, so God has famine. And I think that is important to realize there are moments of famine, and sometimes it's literal famine, like in this case. Sometimes it's spiritual famine. I think it's extremely relevant right now in America. What we see a lot of people who are highly religious, a lot of people who are looking at America going, hey, we're starving. Things are not the way it should be. And I think the story really speaks for what does it mean to be a foreigner? What does it mean to be in a land of famine, of need? And I think the theme of the story, you need to remember the two words, emptiness and fullness. There's these moments of emptiness, which is what we're seeing here at the opening. And there's going to be moments of fullness. And this story is a really encouraging, kind of end with that bright light, that fullness at the end. Not every story does. A few more things, and I promise I'm done. I do love that it centers women. I think that's actually incredibly important. It's an important part of like the Hebrew religion as a whole, because a lot of religions just don't really do that, especially in this time. I think it does a really amazing job, and probably not intentional. I'm going to go with like the C.S. Lewis thing of like maybe the author's original intent and God's original intent might be a little bit different in this case. But I think this novella, I will say it's probably the first novella ever written, really does a lot of work for showing the need of Jesus. Of, hey, we are all in moments of famine. And it connects it. And that's why I think that connection to the Davidic line is actually really important, because it's going to show us, hey, even in these moments of famine, even in the moments of, oh, it's us versus them, the foreigners are us. No, Jesus is the answer to all of that. Leave it all aside. The real fullness isn't in finding a man or finding a woman. It's not in being in the right place, having food. The real fullness comes where? In family, in the little things. I'm going to do some Lord of the Rings stuff later because I think it's important. And the real hope of family, of our life, of our love, of fullness is then found in that Davidic line that ultimately results in the Messianic line of Jesus.
I will say, I like that idea of Ruth being written post-exile, because it actually creates quite a few important parallels with the, like, under that idea, you create some really cool redemptive parallels, right? So like the setting of the story in the time of the Judges would actually kind of parallel how Israel has kind of revisited those days in their time of post-exile, and they're feeling a similar sting post-exile as the Israelites were in the days of the Judges. And so this idea that, hey, we're post-exile, but remember, even back during our last era of just completely wilding out, God's mercy, that scarlet thread, though frayed, had not severed completely. Mm-hmm. And that sort of thing is actually really important to remember when, you listener personally are going through situations in life where you're kind of feeling that chastisement of God, where you're kind of feeling, as it says in Lamentations, the rod has kind of come down on your back. But it's good to remember that that rod is not controlled by Satan or by somebody that wants to destroy you, by a father that loves you and would absolutely love to restore you, as soon as you clear the fog from your eyes and stop wilding out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'll say, we didn't include verse 6 here, but I'm going to go ahead and say it here. What you do see when you're talking about that emptiness, and the stuff that you're talking about too, Cry, is like when you feel that chastisement and all that stuff, like here, the story is centering family, hunger, like literal hunger. And then next up, you're going to see a desire for home. And what's fascinating, we'll talk more if I'm here for chapter 4, the answer to these emptiness of family, the emptiness of your belly, the emptiness of home, it all seems to be resolved at the end with the birth of a child in the Davidic line. And I just, have a hard time thinking it's coincidence. I don't think that was the author's intent. Nothing that we've studied seemed like most of the Hebrew people at this time really were like looking for a Messiah or anything. Some of them definitely were, but it doesn't seem like historically that was their main concern. And yet the story fits really well, and it's hard to be like, oh, that's a coincidence, you know?
Yeah, it is a good typology. It's a strong one.
Okay. I'm going to say real quick, I have a couple things. First off is every single one of us is experiencing some kind of internet issue all at once right here, which, you know, is par for the course for any recording we ever do. So if one of us talks over one another or one of us doesn't respond to something that someone says, it's because we didn't hear it or we heard it as we were talking. So I am very interested to actually listen to this for the first time on Monday, because I may actually hear some of the stuff that's been said.
Well, here's hoping.
But I will say, like, a couple of things you brought up. Like, the reason why the book of Ruth is in here is because this is actual history, sure. But it's also because it is a story of the people who are suffering in the midst of the time of the judges. And we get that sense in our minds, just like, oh, well, everyone in that time wasn't serving God. Well, no, there were periods where people were doing it while everyone else wasn't, or most people weren't, or maybe half of them were. Like, we kind of go an all or nothing thing when that's a false equivalency there. There were honest, earnest people who were actually serving God and doing what they were supposed to do. And Ruth is a great way of showcasing that, but it's also, as has been mentioned by both of you, a great sign towards not only God's promise to bring a Messiah to his people, but showing here's part of the process here. I'm going to show you a man who you're going to uplift as like the greatest example outside of Abraham and Moses and David as like the guy, like the perfect king in your eyes, and yet he's still going to fall short. But this is the stepping stone you need to understand what's going on in a bit. And as a part of being in the time of the judges, we see why Naomi's family leaves Judah behind, Israel behind for a foreign land, because God has afflicted them with a famine, which is something he promised not to do if they served him with their whole heart. We've seen that multiple times over in the Pentateuch. So we see them as they're traveling here, fleeing from where they're supposed to be because their hearts as well aren't fully devoted to God. We will see that especially with Naomi in a bit, but that doesn't mean just because they're not fully with God doesn't mean they still don't know of him and love him and appreciate him. It just means they're complicated people like the rest of us. So when I say some more not condemning things later on about some people involved here, it's not because I think they're all idiots and they have nothing right. It's because I accept them for who they are as flawed people, and we need to call out the good and call out the bad.
Yeah, just briefly, just for the sake of things, because like for my own consciousness, I guess. I haven't done the research on the historicity of this. So when Christian calls it history, that doesn't mean that I agree or disagree. I don't actually know for this one. In general, I question the historicity of most biblical accounts because it doesn't seem like the biblical authors were too concerned with history. But that's fine.
So we also see here, where did they go? Moab is where they go. And Moab, as we've seen in our time in history here, in our time in Judges and the like, and before then, has a very complicated history with their relative Israel. Go all the way back to Genesis 19, where Karai did Sodom and Gomorrah and what happened with Lot and his daughters there, and you will see how extremely complicated this starts off. So at this present time, rather than living amongst their people, Elimelech and his family seek refuge amongst their enemies, whether that be because maybe they can't trust their fellow Israelites or whether their hearts are away from God for a time. Hard to tell. Text doesn't go into it, but it's something that does need to be brought up as well. What is especially interesting here is that his sons do both marry Moabite women. And this is another huge part of the book of Ruth, is a foreigner, a person who you would never expect, but much like in the book of Judges, unlikely heroes leading the charge to bring people closer to God. She is not who you would expect as a Jewish person at this time in history, whenever this was written, to be our heroine. And I will bring up something now, and I'll probably go into more depth next time, but there is no contradiction here that somehow invalidates David's lineage or anyone else in the line simply because one of his ancestors is a Moabite. And according to the law, the person up to the 10th generation couldn't be part of the assembly. You would say, well, how's that not a contradiction? Well, because there's a higher law in effect. The higher law, of course, being love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And here we see perfect examples of that through this, is that, yes, in the wrong Israeli lens, this would be seen as a tainted bloodline. But in the actuality, God's saying, look, I made the Moabites too, and I'm grafting them in through Ruth into your eventual savior, by the way.
Well, and there are,
even if it is go on.
I was saying there's also Levitical law that actually precedents all of this of times where they are supposed to welcome the foreigners as if they are one of you, for you too were a foreigner, right? So like, as if they were one of you, weren't like, oh, we'll treat them the same. No, they're like literally the same. And that part of what makes Hebrew law so absolutely fascinating and why it's such an influential piece of work for most of our common laws today across especially Western civilizations. It's like it works, one, just wisdom, but also like doing to others as you would have them do to you, right? That kind of thing. And I think that's where this is actually really important. Yes, she's a foreigner, not anymore. And that's where I'm going to have gripes in the next couple chapters where I'm like, wait a minute, why are you still calling her a foreigner? Supposed to treat her as one of you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, even if the bloodline were tainted, it's like Jesus is the greatest physician ever. So, like, that's probably light work for him. Plus, later on in the Tanakh, the bloodline of David quite literally receives a blood curse through Jeconiah, and that doesn't halt God's redemptive purposes, in and through the Messiah either. So, yeah, God's just smarter than us, and that's really good news.
Amen.
I have one last point before we move on, and that is the idea of why the rest of this matters as much as it does, because we start off with like, this is a Greek tragedy in many respects at the very beginning for Naomi. Like, losing one's husband in the ancient world was pretty much a death sentence in most societies. And many became homeless widows as a result, who probably didn't last long. Now, if Israel was doing its job, which, granted, remember where we are in history, probably not, then she would have been cared for. This would have been a non-factor because it's written in the law that you are to look after the poor, the widow, the oppressed, the sojourner in the land. Because if you don't, I'm going to do something about it, saith the Lord. So this sets up her despair because she knows who her people are and what they've done. So she knows what awaits her in Israel if she leaves, even if she took both of them with her, as we'll see in a bit.
Good stuff.
All right, we get to go to 6-14?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, no, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
Oh, man, this is one of those little texts I always kind of think of as like, a Torah vindicating text, even though that's not really the purpose of the tale. But just that little blurb that this entire journey set out because she heard about the miracle with the manna. That's all she needed. Oh, their God does bread? Does baked goods? Yeah, we could use that. We gotta we gotta pack the caravan, bro. We gotta get out there, And so I just find it so interesting because people I talk to people all the time that have trouble I guess, seeing the love of God in the Torah, in the Tanakh. And sometimes it's helpful to look at people back then that did see that did see a God of provision, that did see a God that was a very real and present help to people in time of need. Because like they're not going to uproot everything and go on a journey for a God that they believe to be a tyrant at the end of the day. It's like they believe that this God is at least a net positive rather than a net negative. So, and to Josh's point earlier, part of that is because she's in a time of need. Sometimes love is a lot easier to be seen as love when you're in need versus when you're in plenty, a la Jesus in the Beatitudes, right? Blessed are those who are poor in spirit, for to them belong the kingdom of God. We see that happening right here.
Yeah. I love what you said about the baked goods, because this is part of what really stands out to me, honestly. So, again, we're talking about emptiness and fullness throughout this story. And like, they're as empty as they get, right? No husbands and whatever. We're in a time, unfortunately, women aren't treated the best. They're often treated as property. The Hebrew religion tends to be better than the rest, but it's still like, oh, hey, if you wait, my sons can care for you. Like, it's still not the best. But what's funny to me is like I have to inject myself into a story, like I just always do it. And I'm like, I'm reading this novella, whatever, and I'm like, man, okay, so the one girl's like, oh, you're right, love, family, I should go be with my people because then I can find a husband. And the other one's like, no, loyalty, I'm going to be here for you. And quite literally, we're going to go where we see God moving, which I think is the correct thing to do. Where you see God moving, you go there. It just so happens in this case, they're seeing God moving because it's something that benefits, but like they're not going for that reason, right? They're going because God's moving there, you're going, and I'm loyal to you. I'm going to go with you. I'm putting myself in the story going, I don't even know if that God thing would be a factor. Like, I wish it would be, but like, I'm being real. I'm out there hungry somewhere. I'm like, let's go to those baked goods. That's where I want to go. Like, I'm not thinking loyal to Christian or God. I'm thinking, you said food's that way. I don't even care about the family thing where the other girls go off to find a husband. I'm like, nah, man, let me get that food. So I thought it was interesting. They weren't even thinking pragmatically. They're just thinking, that's where God is. They're better than me. I still would have ended up going back, but not for the same reason.
Well, I don't think this might sound shocking to you from someone who's, decidedly, I guess, not on the more progressive side of things. But I actually don't think that dichotomy is as much of a dichotomy as sometimes people make it out to be. Mm-hmm. Since, like the two greatest commands, love God with all you got, love your neighbor as yourself, right? And like in most situations in life, those two things are the same thing. There are some sticky situations where, culture will try to pit one against the other. But I mean, like there is a sense in which there is a very real glory that God gains just from people helping people. And I'll be honest, man, sometimes people forget that, and all the stuff that's going on in life and all the big highfalutin intellectual battles there are to fight. Sometimes the very real, very tangible, hey, you got a neighbor 2 feet from you that can really benefit from your time, energy, resources, and companionship. We miss that.
Oh, yeah. That's good stuff. Also, I don't want to let us pass over before Christian takes over and makes the really great points. I also like,
as he does,
that Orpah isn't like condemned for wanting to go find a husband with her family. It's just like, that's what happens.
I'll just wait.
Well,
I'll get there.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not there quite yet. There is some wordplay here in the original Hebrew. I didn't do too much on it because it's just one of those things that doesn't matter exceedingly. Like if like the Lakim whole thing with like bread and Bethlehem would be what it would be in the Hebrew. It's supposed to be some involving there between the two. But ultimately, what at the start here, what matters to me is God returning to his people Israel. And what that says to me, the unsaid thing there that I see is that means his people must have done something to return to him. So we don't know exactly when in the book of Judges this is. It could have been in any of the times before, like, all right, Jephthah, Gideon, blah, blah, blah. You came and you brought us back. And now we're going to come back to you. Like, irrelevant right now. Yeah, it's relevant in that this is a certain part in history, but like, there's a reason it doesn't specify when. It's because this could literally kind of take place whenever in Israel's pre-monarchy period. And I think a lot of people, when they're reading this book, lose sight of God's providence working through all of this because they focus on the romance, or they focus on, being kind to people. Hey, great parts. These are parts of what's happening here. But this doesn't happen without God returning to his people returning to him, and things being made right for a time. So don't skip over that part real quick. All right.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Next up, let me talk about my girl Naomi. Before we get to the bitterness, well, it's already present. Now, I want to make this clear from the start. I am not condemning Naomi for her decision making. I am questioning and calling out. Mm-hmm. Her decision initially seems reasonable until, you listen to what she's saying and let's factor in how her depression is affecting her worldview. She makes excuses about how things will be more difficult for her daughters-in-law if they come to Judah with her, but refuses to think about how life will improve for them if they leave their pagan life behind to serve God in Israel. Because Naomi is ultimately focused on herself to an extent, as she should be, given what has happened to her. I'm not saying she's wrong to not to think of herself at all. I'm saying she's thinking too much about herself. And she even uses words that seem very kind and loving to make her point, but all I see is her weakness in that moment kind of revealing herself. Oh, don't come with me. Could you really wait for me with the Levitical laws we have? Can you even wait for sons? As if that's what has to happen here. She knows about the idea of there being a redeemer. She could have brought that up, but I think, no, she wants them out because she wants to focus on herself, because she just wants to kind of go off and die, in my opinion. And I think the thing we need to learn from this is that when we narrow our vision, as we always do when we're in pain, that doesn't mean we shouldn't feel the pain. That doesn't mean we're wrong to experience it. It means that we're wrong when we narrow our vision. And to her, she falsely accuses God of being behind her misfortune. Some would say yes, and I could see the argument for why, since they did leave. But I think her thing is more I'm the one being personally affected here. Don't bring up how I abandoned him and his land. But the great part of the book of Ruth is that God is going to show his mercy to her because of his love for Naomi throughout this whole book, despite what she said and died. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to kind of compare and contrast three Bible short stories. Also, I think we a lot of times do a disservice by having the Bible as one big book, and we should just have all the books separate sometimes, because it makes it easier for us to remember these are different stories, different books that were compiled for a reason, sure, but sometimes I think it helps to think of them separately. But I'm thinking of the story of Ruth, the story of Jonah, my least favorite short story ever, and I can't stand it, and then Esther.
Really?
And I think what's interesting is Jonah, God's part is just so blatantly obvious, right? It is in your face. And the question is what's Jonah going to do next, right? Esther, we never say the name of God, but man, it is just so abundantly clear how God is in control. What I love about Ruth is there's 2 times God actively does something, but most of the story you're wait a minute, what does God want this family to do? Why aren't they praying to God? I think we're meant to see this as on the ground. This is a Marvel special presentation. We're wait a minute, how does this connect to everything else? What's going on? And no, that's not the point. The point is, this is just a real family, feeling real things, doing things. And we're meant to wonder, where is God? What is happening? I think part of the point is wondering about the context. We're supposed to speculate. This was made for the geeks. And I kind of love that. Because, man, how real is it? I felt it. The Doctor felt it in Doctor Who, right? We've all been there where we're we get to a point where we're just bitter, man. We're well, I was out starving. I was out doing this. And yeah, sure, blame God, blame your family, blame whatever. Blame the devil is a common thing in churches, right? And the point isn't who you blame. The point is you got bitter. And let's see where the story goes. And I think it's actually important that, yeah, God intervenes directly twice, but we're still left wondering, what is God's plan for this family? Where is God? I think it's important.
Oh, that's good stuff, man.
I have one more thing, and that is on Orpah. And initially, she's on the team. It seems they're leaving right now. It's partway through their journey where Naomi is kind of having this moment of, oh, you should leave me behind, which is a dangerous thing to do with an old woman traveling by herself in the first place. But let's forget that for a moment. And it's then two women on their own is its own thing. Like, she didn't, Orpah leaves before making it all the way there. And I can't help but see, maybe you can call me out and say you're just reading into the text, but I think I'm right on this. Someone who gets so close to truth, but they give up in the end. The Lot's wife of it all. They turn back and they go back to their life of sin. And like, now look, in the text, her exact reasons aren't made clear. Let me preface it with that. But to me, it's kind of blatantly obvious. She grew up in this culture in Moab where other things were appreciated. Yeah, she had a husband who was an Israeli. Great, whatever. But like, all right, go back to my family. Sounds easy to me. Go back to the things that I know and am comfortable with. Seems easy to me. And goes there. So unlike her sister-in-law, Ruth, what I see is Orpah returning to what's familiar to her, which is a life in Moab devoid of God.
Yeah, I don't see it. I know where you're coming from, but I'm like, man, the text doesn't say it for a reason. To me, it feels, and again, this is probably part of me not seeing it as history, where I'm like, I don't know if it's history or not, but it feels like this character, Orpah, exists solely to show us like, this was an acceptable thing. It was an acceptable thing to go somewhere else. It was incredible for someone to make the choice of, actually, no, I'm going to stay loyal to you, even though it goes against all my wishes. So to me, it feels like Orpah's just there, not to say that this is a sinner, what a sinner would do or anything like that, but rather to show this is how incredible Ruth is. That's just my perspective. But yeah.
Well, that is true. Yeah, she does definitely serve as a counterpoint to Ruth's generosity and faithfulness.
How about we get to Ruth? We go to verses 15 through 18. And she, Naomi, said, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more.
Oh, yeah, because she started to speak in the language of covenant. Like, what else can you really say to that except, all right, if you want to ride and or die, who am I to get in the way of your desire? But what I think is interesting, too, here is, like, this is one of those scenarios where, like, and all people are different, right? So sometimes a person's faithfulness to people begins because they were first faithful to God. In her case, she seems to be one of those people where it worked in reverse, where like her faithfulness to a person was kind of the road into faithfulness to the one true God, which I personally also don't really have a problem with. I don't really care how people end up getting to Jesus, as long as the Jesus you get to is the right one. Yes. I don't really care. I just want to see the wedding table of the Lamb full. By any means necessary at the end of time. So it's pretty cool to see, to see that work here, right? But again, just like that idea that like our relationships with people and our neighbors are more important than our culture here in America just kind of accidentally trains us to believe. We affect the people around us. Every single person we meet in the road, we leave a wake with them. Small or big, doesn't matter. It's there and it affects them. Are you affecting them for good? Are they affecting you for ill? These are questions that we should consider more often than we do, instead of believing what is, in my opinion, the adult hedonistic fairy tale that what I do really only matters for me. It's a very self-serving way to view the world that I don't think really helps anyone out.
Yeah. Will Rose, Karai was trying to say entanglement. There you go. he likes that word. He likes that word. Yeah. I love that. Anecdote from back when I went to like Pentecostal church camp every summer. It was something I actually noticed on pretty early in my life. That was just so interesting. You had the people who go out and pray God save them so they didn't go to hell, and then you had the people who was like, constantly praying, God, give me the gift of tongues, give me the gift of tongues. And like a lot of times they're just like, why am I not getting it? And then you just don't see it. But then you notice people start praying for someone else. And when they're praying for someone else is when the Spirit's starting to move on them. And sometimes you would see speak on tongues, sometimes you see other things. And I was like, man, it always seems like God moves more when people are praying for others than when they come up and trying to pray that they get something from God. And, I always thought that was kind of interesting, just experientially. Also, just as far as reading it, told you I was going to get into Lord of the Rings. Big point of Tolkien's work wasn't all war is bad or anything. It is supposed to be pitting industry and the simple life of the Shire, or the industry of burning down the trees to make Uruk-hai like Sauron, right? And that's what I see here is like throughout the book of Ruth, it's like, hey, God sometimes is just in the simple things in your normal daily life and just a family trying to make it. And what I love about this speech, I can't not think of that time Frodo's going to go off by himself to do the ring thing, right? And Sam's running into the river and goes, and Frodo's like, I'm going to do this alone or whatever. And Sam's like, of course you are. And I'm coming with you. And like, that's what this moment is. And I love it.
Well, you beat me to it. I was going to bring it up as well, because that's kind of perfect. I mean, look, we use illustrations in these things, not because we have to appeal to pop culture and appeal to people, but actually help them understand what's going on here. A lot of people have seen the Lord of the Rings film. Not as many people have read the book of Ruth. So when you see Ruth acting like Samwise does, it's like, oh, I see the correlation. It's like, that's exactly what she's doing. She's helping someone despite that person not wanting help, knowing that they need help. Naomi needs help.
The only culture I know is pop. So if I'm going to contextualize the gospel, that's how I'm going to do it.
That's a good
That's
quote.
not some inherent weakness.
T-shirt. The only culture is pop.
Now, there's a wrong way to do it. And I've been in many services where I've seen it done the wrong way. But like, hey, appeal to people correctly. And this is a great way to do it, because Ruth right here, this is where she becomes like our gal. Like, opposed to all the women around her, she proves she is a woman of God, even if she doesn't realize it herself quite yet. I don't think she does. I think she's on the path, and she's going to get there sometime in the time she's in Israel. But right here and now, she refuses to return to her family, who are still alive and well. So she would be cared for if she remained with them, just like Orpah. However, there are several things more important to her that she considers before daring to think about returning to her old life. She knows Naomi needs to be cared for, and from what she's witnessed and what she's heard, Naomi's God is greater than anything else. Once again, I don't think like this is her moment she's got saved or anything. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think this is like on the path, like recognizing that. And like Christ said earlier, like, I don't care how you get here to truth. Just get there. I'd rather someone rip the veil, from their face and bow down before Jesus, bow down before God and say, hey, you're the only one for me. Forgive me for everything I've done. Then be like, oh, well, intellectually, I believe in a God, or like, I don't care. Like, it's whatever, man. It's like, no, like, come to him. And she does.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean when I mention like the validation of like the Old Testament God, right? Because her focus is not, to Josh's very good point, her focus is not on God at this point. Her focus is on a friend. Her focus is on, I want to help this human being that's next to me, right? Which means that she's going to go in the path that she really believes in her heart of hearts is what's actually going to help this human being next to her. And the path that she went down, when who knows how many options were in front of her, was to go, we're going to go pursue that Old Testament God. Not because I have any particular affiliation with that Old Testament God, but because I want to help you. And I think it's telling to me that in her eyes, what she thought was the best way to help this human being was to pursue that Old Testament God that thousands of years later people malign as a bully and all this other stuff. So it's one of those moments where it's like, for people that do have a challenge seeing the love of God in the Old Testament, maybe let Ruth's perspective from way back then challenge yours now. Mm-hmm. Maybe she saw something that you're not seeing.
Yeah, I risk it making this long. I'm sorry to myself, but
we know who's on the show.
You're fun to listen to. With the author of this almost certainly did not have Christian theology or Jesus Christ in mind when writing this, right? Like, probably not.
Yes.
But as someone who modern day lives and knows all these things to have truth, be of value for theology, of discernment, all of that stuff that would say in Hebrew, right? This, to me, I think we just miss so much in our modern times of like what salvation looks like. Do we think like it looks like you say the magic words and God does something for you so that you don't go to the bad place and get your ticket to the good place, right? Like, and I just hate it because like that's never what God's about. God's never about you and your salvation. Like, it's always like the salvation of the people. God wants to love the world. He wants to save the world. Your people become part of the church. Most of the time that it says work out your salvation in the New Testament, people use that about themselves and doing like little personal things. It's actually the plural you. Anyway, what we see with Ruth and Naomi, someone walks alongside of her, right? And sometime, I say at the beginning right here, we're like, probably not saved at the beginning. Definitely, like, she's not like with God. By the end of that book, you're like, she is. And I could never once point to time and go, that's when she said the magic words. Maybe it's when she said the covenant. Probably not. Go to Jesus and the disciples. Jesus never said, all right, stop and say the sinner prayers, guys. What he said, stop, come with me, walk with me. Let's do this journey. At the beginning, it's pretty clear that these disciples, especially like, we have the tax collector, the people who are the zealot, probably not saved. But then at the end, you're looking at it and you're like, well, yeah, of course they knew Jesus. At what point did they say the magic words? Point to it. It's a little bit easier with Paul, maybe. But he also had to spend 40 years in the desert, so not really. I don't think there is a magical point when someone suddenly is saved and now they're part of God's people. I think it's a journey for all of us. And what I have to do for every podcast I'm on is reference C.S. Lewis. In the Four Loves, in the preface, he talks about two different versions of being close to God. By proximity and by your pathway, right? And like some people are right there at the top of a cliff and right underneath them is the city, and that city is God, and they're super close. They're never going to get to God. Living right, imitating all the right things. They are right there. They'll never get it. Some people maybe look nothing like God, but guess what? They're on the path that eventually is going into the city. So in a way, they're a lot closer than that guy who's at the top of the cliff. And I think that's what we're seeing right here with Ruth. That's what we see with all the disciples. I think that's what salvation really looks like. It's like you're on a path. And there are some points where we're like, what are you doing? You're nowhere near God's land. You're abandoned. You're talking about hunger and you're just following her. It's not about God for you. You're like, what is going on? Guess what? She's a lot closer to God than a lot of the people who are in Israel, who are imitating, going to the temple, doing all the right things. Because guess what? Israel was punished for a reason. Just because you're religious, just because you're acting right, doesn't mean you're getting any closer to God. But Ruth was. The zealot, the tax collector, the fishermen of Jesus' time, they were on the way. The point is the path. Are you going through the journey? Okay, sorry. I preached and I didn't mean to.
I'm right, Sean.
Do any of us actually mean to?
Yeah. Sometimes that Pentecostal dog just comes back up, man. I don't know.
Let that dog off the leash, man. It's a house party today, man.
Yeah. You can leash yourself after we're done recording.
Oh, okay. Cool. Good.
Yeah. How about we had the 19 through 22? So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi," which means pleasant. "Call me Mara," which means bitter. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest.
See, Christian, you read that because you know my cheat sheet, and I appreciate the way that you set me up for that just now, buddy. I appreciate that. But for for people that have listened to my to my transgenderism and the gospel series, this little passage here in Ruth should sound very familiar. This was a key text that I went through in episode 4 of that series. Where I was dealing with, yes, like transgender, I guess, issues, but at a greater category level, how do I pay it? Identity dysphoria, just period, which I think every single human being under the sun throughout all time has had to deal with in some way, shape, or form. Who am I, and what are the implications of whatever answer I come up with to that question, right? Now, in studying that out, whenever I come to this section of Ruth, I personally can't really help but for my mind and my heart to kind of go out to that community because I hear them in these words. Don't call me this, call me that, but for a very specific reason. Because, at least from their perspective, right, they're not pleasant. They're bitter. And I'm going to put that bitterness on God. And what really hurts here is the fact that she's not even saying this in like a, don't call me pleasant because there's like nothing in my life that's pleasant, although that's part of that. It almost feels to me like she's saying it deeper, like at an ontological level. I'm not pleasant. I'm bitter. So don't lie to me. And don't call me something that I'm not. And like that always hits for me, man. Like she gave up believing that she or her life was pleasant. It pained her to even use her own name because of the incongruity between the meaning of her name and the circumstances in life that she found herself in. It's too painful for her to stand in without doing something about how she processed her own identity. And if that doesn't break your heart for people in the modern day that, you know, fight a similar battle in gender fluidity, then I think you might be drinking too much out of a Steven Crowder's mug club cup, to be honest. You know, like as much as I might agree with some of the things that come out of those Christian adjacent content creators, they struggle with communicating the heart of God for redemption, you know, to certain people groups. Let's just call a spade, right? And there are a bunch of different name changes that happen in the Bible. Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah, and on, right? But what I find interesting about this one is that this particular name change is not reflected in the text itself like the others were. There is no point after chapter 1, verse 20, where the text itself calls her anything other than Naomi. And we know from the apostolic literature that the Holy Spirit himself is the one who ultimately inspired the text. However you interpret the historicity of it, is Holy Spirit inspired. So when the historical figure / character of Naomi says, don't call me pleasant, I'm not. I'm bitter because you got her against me. I feel like God's reply is, but I want to be for you. You're not bitter to me, but you're pleasant to me, and I refuse to call you anything less than what I see. You are not Mara to me, but rather Naomi. And in time, you'll come around to that truth as well, you know? And so that, you know, and there's a bunch of other things you could say here in that. But at least for me, that's where my mind tends to go to a lot when I'm in this little tail end of chapter 1 of Ruth.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from. I like it. I feel like we probably have, or at least all three of us probably have different ideas of what maybe redemption and recovery looks like for people who are struggling with gender dysphoria. I think it probably depends on circumstance personally. Because I think sometimes it's a real thing, and I think sometimes people are bitter and upset, and it really isn't as much about gender as that. And sometimes I think there's biological stuff that I'm like, scientifically, I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with this. But that's not the point. The point is I do agree with you. Names matter. God wants redemption for everybody. And a lot of times we miss where's the heart of God and how we treat them, regardless of what you think redemption looks like. That's not your call.
I think one of the main reasons why the text never refers to her again as Mara, not because Mara isn't a cool name, because
Awesome.
you know Mara Jade in the good Star Wars is an excellent character. She's not in the bad Star Wars because they couldn't handle her greatness. But because like
The only culture we know
when
is
you look
pop.
at what she's when you look at what's being said here by Naomi, it's like, okay, don't call me, you know, Naomi, call me Mara. Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full and the Lord has brought me back empty. Was Ruth's name Mud now? Does she not mean anything to you? Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me because I chose to leave my country of origin in the midst of suffering rather than suffer with my people? Maybe. Could that be part of what's being said here? I would say yes. Other people would say no. I think that's a little up to interpretation. I'm not going to call you Mara because, yeah, like you said, I don't feel bitter towards you. You're my daughter. You're pleasant to me. And I know you're feeling this way right now. I'm not saying your feelings don't matter, but don't make your feelings define you into something that you're not. Be pleasant.
I'm gonna give kind of like a reverse story, I guess, maybe. I've found myself different circumstances, obviously, than this, feeling really bitter for a time. I remember there was a time I was actively trying to prove that God didn't exist and the Bible was fake so that I could just like walk away from it all, because I was like, I actually hate all of this. I was mad at God and all that. Ended up finding some stuff, but then I was like, actually, there's a different way to interpret this, different way of looking at it, and I found myself in a different way of thinking about my faith rather than just leaving it, and changed a lot for me. It really was in that moment of darkness. I'm still struggling. To probably a lot of people do call it the deconstruction, reconstruction, whatever stuff. I don't like terms, man. And they weren't calling deconstruction. It wasn't like the thing people were talking about back then. But I had my car accident. I got badly injured. Had a hard time moving. Had a few really important interactions with God that, about whether I was going to hike or run or different things, and like prayers and healings and moments that really mattered to me. And at the end of that, I was like, I try not to go by Josh anymore. I usually go by Joshua, but I'm not so stingent on what people call me, mostly because I think my identity is in Jesus. Like, I'd prefer to be called Joshua now because to me, I feel like a different person than I was before that. But it's not about me. Someone wants to come up and call me Boogerhead or something, and we can have a meaningful conversation about the Lord. Like, hey, call me Boogerhead, dude. Like sure. Because that's not where my identity is. So that's where I'm like, names are important. I do think they are. I don't think at the end of the day they really define us. And I sort of think it is beautiful that even though she was like, I'm tired of my name of sweet and pleasantness and wants to go by something else, that really something more is what defines her. And it's not even about the name. Names are important, but there's something more here. And I think that's what we see going forward. And I love this book. It's a good book.
Hey man, this man Joshua out here preaching.
I'm really not trying. I can't help it today. I don't know.
I'll be saying that about we saying that about Christians sometimes, man. I say Christian be preaching. Joshua, brother, you preaching. Why?
Thanks.
You underselling some of the things that the Lord is showing you, in your walk. Let me just take a second to encourage you, man. Since we having a house party out here, bro. Like, don't even worry about like construction, deconstruction. Like, worry, like, that's all that is fluff. That people that like to get into very unhelpful weeds, like to focus on. To take what you said and put it back in your face. Mm-hmm. Jesus got you on a path, bro. At one time, you didn't even think you would be this far in with Jesus. Because like you said, at one point, you was trying to disprove the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And now, even though, from your perspective, it probably feels like you're dealing with, interpretations and things that may or may not, that might not be as popular as, you're walking with Jesus, and Jesus has discipled knuckleheads that are way more knuckly and heady than you ever were.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah. And hearing you say it also makes me wonder if like that's part of why I resonate so much with C.S. Lewis, because he had that whole like, let's disprove God thing and then like come back. And I'm like, is that why I resonate? Is like, I wonder one day maybe I'll get to ask him how similar were our journeys. I kind of want to know.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go to the war, but we had a pandemic.
Oh man, and what's funny is a lot of people probably felt like a Naomi.
Yeah.
During that pandemic,
Definitely.
and probably still even now.
A lot of emptiness.
Because as much as our, conservative Christian adjacent talking heads want to mock it, for a lot of people, pandemic's not over either.
Yeah.
A lot of people are still there, or at least dealing with the ramifications and stuff of what came out of that. Seasons of bitterness oftentimes do last way longer than anyone ever signs up for, and usually last way longer than all of us prideful onlookers subjectively feel like you should be feeling sad for. But whoever's listening to this, don't listen to those people. They're just people. Like, what do they know about your situation? There's only one person that's got Sauron's all-seeing eye, and he's seated on a throne that's very high up.
Yeah.
right? So take your problems and take all your bitterness to the only dude that could actually see it all.
Yeah. Well, then
He'd prefer Arrow or Lubitar. One.
I want to. Can I
go ahead, Joshua?
I was going to say I think part of that could actually be a good transition because like I love that. It's good seeing that. Oh, the bitterness can also blind you. And I think what's interesting is like not only is she like blind to her own identity, what we're about to see in the story is like she told them she had no one, there was no all this stuff, and then we're about to see pretty shortly. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, there is a family redeemer. What? Hold up. Where was that when you were talking to your daughter-in-laws earlier? I think that bitterness just blinds you to, hey, wait, there are other ways because you think it is so hopeless. All you see is how hopeless it is, right? And like,
yeah,
I think so many people today, and this is what just irritates me about our culture in America, is like they take that bitterness and it blinds them and then they end up polarizing. So I know a lot of people who, I've lost family members because of stuff that happened in the pandemic. I know a lot of people who have. And a lot of them would take them and be like, well, see, the church actually doesn't really love people because this is what happened. They get so mad that they just want nothing to do with the church anymore. And I see people on the other side with the same family member sometimes. They lost the same family member, but they'll say, well, see, liberals, they invented this saying and made it up. And that's why the hospitals weren't treating people. And they're so mad at the liberals. And that's why, and like, you're just letting this bitterness to blind you and make you hate each other. Whether you're in the church building or not, God's not in that. And that's, I don't know, that's where I think that bitterness blinds us. And I think it's here we see it's blinded, not Mara, Naomi, to herself.
I was saying real quick before
Christian, I need you to turn to your neighbor and tell him this brother preaching right now. That's what I need you to do. Preaching.
You brought something up, Joshua, that made me remember in pandemic. Karai and I both suffered the loss of a church during the midst of that. He got hit a lot harder than I did. And if you want to hear a little more on that, I speak briefly on it on a church an episode we just did on church hurt for whole church.
That's coming out.
I didn't go into detail on. Okay, I didn't go into detail for every single thing because I had to appreciate Joshua's time, and love him well, and I can be very verbose, as it were. But you can hear parts of it there, and that sucked, especially as I was about to go into seminary. Suffering the loss of a church with people I really cared for and, a pastor that I really cared for and the way he handled certain things there that he still hasn't been repentful of to this day that I'm aware of in many respects. Like that hurts. I could have easily ended up bitter and God helped me find, that I'm still pleasant to him in the midst of all that. And because he has given me my kinsman redeemer, and we'll find that by moving forward to
if you
chapter
keep going,
2.
I have to mute my mic. Remember, I used to be Pentecostal. But speaking in tongues is on the table.
As long as there's someone to interpret it, I won't be mad. 1-7. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his young man, who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest.
That's the part I get mad at, where it's called her a Moabite woman. No. Treat her as one of your own. And it gives me flashbacks. It gives me flashbacks of a church I used to go to where we had an awesome youth pastor who went out to not a great part of town and brought all these kids in who were, you could tell they were from a certain part of town. And they were at youth lead, and you had so many parents upset. Like, what are the they would say the name of that area of kids doing here? And talking about this, I'm like, wait a minute, no, they're church kids now, right? They're at our church, they're in our youth group, they are no different than your kids. Not like everything they did, not like everything your kids did. Sorry, lady. And that's I don't know. That's why
wouldn't you rather they be here than where they are?
Yeah, which is funny because this also goes back to the identity stuff. They're placing that name on her. They're not calling her Ruth. She is the Moabite. But by her actions, he says what they do. What I love about, I'm trying to remember his name now. Is it Moab? Boaz. That's what I'm thinking of, right?
Boaz.
Yeah. hears this. It doesn't go, oh, the Moabite woman. He hears the action. He's going to let that be what defines her. I'd like that for him too. Like we're going to have a good love interest. Boaz is pretty all right. I like him. I'm here for it.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing that you do bring that up, right? Like as an African American Christian, I definitely see that and feel that tension, quite a bit. But what we see here is like a small peek at overall humanity's need for new humanity, for one new man. Mm-hmm. Right? Like the way that you phrased it earlier when you was preaching, was you said that, it was a little easier, not easy, but just easier to navigate certain identity issues because you had something underneath all that in Jesus that was firm and fixed, right? So the stuff above it that was in flux can be in flux, right? Is one of the things that we oftentimes don't consider to be a blessing about being in Christ, but it is. The blessing of being in Christ is that everything else about you is now free to be in flux because he's not fluctuating, right? You actually are free to figure it out, and people are going to freak out to hear me say that. And listen, man, if anyone, I got hundreds of hours of stuff on my podcast. Y'all know what I'm not saying. Okay. But hear what I am saying. All right. You got freedom to figure yourself out in Christ because it's not on you. It's on him. And that's a very, very freeing thing, right? Paul says in Ephesians 2 to all of us non-Jews, remember what you were called. Remember what people would call you before Jesus. But now that you're in Jesus, he himself is our peace, who has made us both one. Right. And Paul's speaking of two people groups, but you could extend that twosome into every group out there. Mm-hmm. He's taken all of the different clans and ethnicities and all this stuff and made us one. Taken all of those who were far off and put them on level ground with those who will be considered to be near, all in the blood of Christ. Because as the man who discipled me, appreciate you, shout out Dave Hutchings from Cadence International, would always tell me, the ground is always level. Only at the foot of the cross.
Mm-hmm. Now you,
and that's why that's yeah. but I own it, man. God, yeah. And that's a part of my identity struggle too. God, that Christian can tell you it's a recent development that I've gotten to this place of preaching this confidently. Right, I'm 30 years old, and it took every second of those 30 years for God to get me here, and I'm comfortable with that. Finally,
and I'm grateful. That was good. That was good.
So I mean, but we see that here, right? The need for a new man. And as we look out over the strife that exists in our world presently, this is why I say all the time, the kingdom is the only hope we got. That's why we got to push it. Because again, the ground is only level here because God leveled it for us.
Ruth, multiple times over in the book of Ruth, is called the Moabite. Not, depending on context, not because, she's a filthy foreigner. This one would be the filthy foreigner kind of call, based on the reactions of the person speaking initially, because he's got the wrong mindset. The other times the Moabite part is brought up is because it's supposed to contrast this faithful foreigner compared to the people of Israel, who by their very nature should have started off faithful because they should have been taught from a young age, this is how you're supposed to react. This faithless Israelite, with his statement, whether he has no faith in God, that's his own thing. But right here now, he's revealing parts of his true nature and how he views the other. He views the foreigner in his midst, despite the fact he should have been taught multiple times over. No, while she's here, she's family. You treat her well. You do what you're supposed to do. And that's why it's so huge what we see Boaz doing later on, because, hey, we know who he is from verse 1. A worthy man. Karai and I have both talked about the Rakim, worthless fellows with Jephthah, and the Belial while we're dealing with the Benjamites, the sons of Belial, sons of Satan, essentially. We have a Hayil here, a worthy man. This is someone who, like When that comes up, if you've been reading in sequence, you should go, wait, I should be noticing something about that. He's different than everyone else. He's actually doing his job. He's actually working for the people around him. And we'll see actually him doing that, shown that, we're told, worthy. How are we shown that? Well, we'll see in the next couple of verses. This is who he is.
I mean, we see. Oh, go on, Josh. Go on, Josh. Gotta let him bring out the heat.
Oh no, mine was going to be simple and like more, I guess, technical. I was just I like this. It's one of the good parts of the book of Jonah. That there's countless tales in Isaiah. God's always been about saving all people. It's so the thing where people do like contrast the old God to the new God of the New Testament. God's literally always wanted to save everybody. He was going to save everyone through Israel. Now he's saving everyone through Jesus, who's the fulfillment of everything he said about Israel. But like, if you go to the book of Acts, there's I think a really good podcast series. One of the last ones that Michael Heiser did before he passed on the Naked Bible podcast. And when he's going through Acts, what you see, if you're actually paying attention, is what you see in the Old Testament of how God kept saying, okay, not these people, not these people, not these people. Acts goes the exact opposite direction of, okay, now Paul's going to reach these people. Now this person's going to reach these people. And if you look geographically, it's the same. So it opens back up to everyone. So if this, I don't know, greases your wheel, you're like, I love the stories of like other people other than the Israelites being saved and God being about everybody. I don't know. Maybe check out Michael Heiser, Naked Bible podcast, when they did the book of Acts right near the end of that.
And good shout out. Good shout out, man. I was going to say, last thing before we, continue here, but the servant contrasted with Boaz, who is doing his job, right? All he can see is where she's from, right? And again, we see a little slice of something else that's true of fallen man throughout all of time. When the image of God in a person is devalued, the only thing left is utilitarianism, and it is a selfish version of it. That is all you have left, the selfish utilitarianism when people are not valuable intrinsically. Who is this? Why is she here? Oh, a Moabite? Well, now she needs to justify her own existence here. Her own existence is not axiomatic. She has to justify it now. And, she understands that. That's why she instantly says, please let me do fill in the blank. She knows what this is. I can't just exist here. I have to do something. Yeah, because even though as God's people, the image of God is not valued.
Yeah. And instead of contrasting here, we get a nice look at the both of them, Ruth and Boaz. Boaz, we'll see, especially later on, like how he handles his work as well, how he handles a foreigner in his midst. But Ruth is the one who's proving herself right now, showing her worthiness without that word needing to be used, and how she's acting. Like, she's doing work that doesn't guarantee her results. By following after the gatherers to take the scraps of food that fall to the dirt, just so that she and Naomi can be fed and live to see another day. Now, shockingly, this is, of course, due to God's planning, foresight, and love for his people, since this was a requirement given by the law, as we covered way back in Leviticus 19, Deuteronomy 24. I'm probably forgetting something else. And the grand irony for her, she is wholly unaware of God's providence in providing these laws and for sending her to Boaz's field. She could have gone anywhere. And yet she somehow ends up there? You think that somehow just happened? Like, come on. Like, you think that God himself is shocked? Like, oh, are you kidding me? That law I put there, it actually worked? Oh, man, I'm pretty good at this job. Like, no, he knew it was going to happen. Like, he brings us to where we need to be and guides the good laws of the land to make his will known in the world. And this Ruth is like the perfect example of that. That the same God who made all those rules we want to skip over because they're boring, made those rules to serve his people, even when they weren't his people yet.
Good stuff.
All right, 8 through 16. Then Boaz said to Ruth, now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to her, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her.
I had to do a little bit of research on this one. One of the things I found interesting, because we're in the land of Israel, and sort of like most stories, you want to believe the people you're reading about, you're cheering for, are like all the good guys. But he talks about the men not touching her is what I thought was interesting. Version you read is a question. Yes. Christian Standard Bible has it as a question. New American Standard Bible has it as a statement, but it's let me see if I can find it. Sorry about that. I've commanded servants not to touch you. It was like a statement. The New Jerusalem Bible that I read earlier uses the word molest, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. Hebrew word for touch there, it can imply violent touch. It could just mean touch. There's a few different interpretations, but I find it interesting. It does seem to imply that he was worried if she went elsewhere, even in Israel, even in Bethlehem, she might get molested. And that's where he's like, let's stay here. Stay with my people. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. But the fact that that was a real concern, one, tells us something about how women repeat it even here. Two, tells us what kind of man he is, that he's just met her. And that's his first thing is let's not let that happen to you.
Yeah, correct. Just the tribe that borders the northern part of Judah.
The tribe that borders northern Judah? For whatever reason, oh man, I'm not an expert on that. For whatever reason, those names.
Just discussed it.
I know. See, but you're the scholars of the people. I'm not. But for whatever reason, I Dan? That's not Dan. It's not Dan. But for whatever reason, that's the name that's filling my skull right now. And there's no way that's right. It's not Dan.
Benjamin.
Yeah, you're right. We did just talk about that. That's crazy. That is crazy. No. If it's history, that would be the sort of thing that would place it in time. If the nonsense with the Benjamite Civil War is in the recent past, then it would actually explain Boaz's concern.
Yeah, that ending of Judges is just brutal. Brutal.
Rough.
Yeah.
Rough for a reason. Now, I'm not saying that is gospel, but that's what came to my mind about potentially placing this in the timeline. Because if that's on his mind, even if it's not recent, that's something they're speaking of. This happened in the past. It might be done again. So whether he knows his young men are like this already, and that raises up hiring requirements for Boaz, or he's like, this could happen. And we would go back to scripture. He says, hey, if a woman is in an open field, she can't do anything about it, which would have been a scenario like this. It's not her fault, it'd be the guy's fault. He's thinking of stuff like this in his mind. So it's like, let me comfort you more by saying, I've already talked to my dudes. If they try anything, you come to me, they gone.
All I'm saying, How I Met Your Mother, missed an opportunity. Barney Stinson could have pointed to this as the first example of the bro code. Could have done it. That could have been the first dibs. Who knows?
Man, it's tough. I so vibe with Boaz right here, bro. Because, we exist in a church that until Jesus returns is in a similar state to Israel right here. Wheat mixed in with tares. And man, if it ain't difficult to tell the two apart some days. Sometimes, at least for me, I know sometimes I feel a pressure on me to be a really good representative of Christianity and Jesus to young believers early, because I know the devil has some tares lined up to sift you like wheat. And it makes a huge difference, especially in the life of a young believer, to at least have one example of someone who isn't perfect, but ain't a liar. to be able to fall back on and be like, as you inevitably run into the liars in the world, you can say, okay, but I met one and he wasn't perfect, but he wasn't that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have a testimony of the faithfulness of Jesus. Like this path in Christendom doesn't have to end in ruin and hypocrisy and evil, But it's like, do you think Boaz was the type of guy that would have even needed this kind of warning? Like, Josh, you mentioned Doctor Who earlier. One of my favorite doctor lines is from the 11th when he's, pressing up on, the lady, a good man goes to war.
Mm-hmm.
You got too many rules. And he said, bruh, a good man don't need rules. Today is not the day to find out why I have so many.
Such a good line.
But like it applies to Israel, right? If Israel was a good nation, they wouldn't need that many rules.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't.
Yeah.
You want to learn why they needed that many rules? Go back to the brutal ending of Judges. Yeah. That's why.
Which, again, Pentecostal in me, but I think that's why. The New Testament says we're no longer under the law. We're under the Spirit, right? When the Holy Spirit's in you, it fundamentally changes you. You don't need the law. You need the law when you don't have the Spirit, when you don't have it. I do say also I don't want to be the one that's like, oh, only Christians can do good. There are a lot of good here. I think it's upon everyone who wants to be a good person to create safe places. I love QT for this. A lot of people actually love QT for this. They have cameras outside and have like things. This is a safe place. It's actually just a good business model too. But that's not what we're here for. I know one place I worked for legal reasons. I can't get into a lot of details, but I worked somewhere where I actually had to report something happening. One such young man seemed like things were about to happen. Reported, had him banned. And there's someone who still works at that place because of what almost happened to them, and they realize this is a safe place and that's where they have comfort. And it's like, I think that's upon all of us to create safe places. So it's Boaz being a good example, not just to Christians, just in general. Be like Boaz, be like QT. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not the analogy I thought was going to happen today. But you know what? That works too.
I mean, hey, as you know, I'll never miss an opportunity to, to harangue the church. I hold the church to a higher standard than I do the world.
Mm-hmm.
We need to care about justice. It feels like there's something. Josh, you're the one that, as I understand, you're the one that like edits these. So like you probably both know, but like it feels like every time I'm guest starring with Christian, there's something in the text that just makes me say, hey, church, remember justice. Remember that thing that's the foundation of the throne of the gods you claim to follow? Why are we so good at forgetting that?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so good at forgetting to establish justice?
Well, then I'd have to work, right?
It's like all y'all that, have like 9, liberal tier mugs in your kitchen, coffee cup drawer. Drink your liberal tears all day. I won't stop you, but I will say, don't you dare drink another one if you're still being a hypocrite. Don't you dare. I don't want to see it. I want to hear it. I don't want to hear you attacking certain groups for their lack of justice when we want to sweep matters of justice under the rug in the church for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
One of my favorite things about Erasing Hell, Francis Chan and somebody else writes it together. I don't agree with everything in it, but one of the things they point out that I really do like is that Jesus talked about hell to 2 groups. It wasn't his followers. It wasn't the terrible sinners. It was the highly religious people and the rich people. And that doesn't mean that they're the only people who need to know about hell. But I think if you go through the Bible, of course, most of it's targeted at telling God's people how to be God's people and not people who aren't God's people how to be God's people. Because we're always going to be messed up. We always need to be working to be more like God's people. And here's the kicker. What one of my biggest gripes with evangelism, actually, most of the people who aren't God's people, they already know that they're wrong. They already know that they need something, that they're empty. We're going back to the book of Ruth. They feel that emptiness. They don't need you to remind them of it. They already know that. Our word for them should be good news, a good word. Our word for ourselves need to be the hard word. So yeah, of course, when you're on here, you're going to see stuff in the Bible. It's going to be talking about God to God's people, about God's people. We're the ones who need that. The world needs the good news.
Amen.
Boaz the man he needs to be in this time. Like, if we had 1,000 more Boazes, the world would be a different place. We had one Boaz, the world would be a different place. And for Ruth, that's where this starts. But it doesn't start because Boaz just likes people. He did it because he's a good guy and he's serving his Lord. But he sees her humbleness on display here. And I think we can't neglect that. I'm not saying you guys have neglected that. But like, what's happened here is amazing. She never would have expected something like this to happen. Like, at best, she probably figured, some guys will make passes at me. I'll just get the wheat and I'll make it back home, maybe. And hopefully that's what happens. But no, she gets Boaz. God delivers him to her and delivers her to him in this way because they're both doing what they're supposed to be doing. One, knowing what's right and what's wrong. The other, learning what's right and what's wrong. And her, without knowledge of the law, has already shown more faith and humility than most of the people around her who knew better. And God has once again rewarded her for being faithful. And I also want to point out, like, she is a woman of action. She's not a woman of passive faith here. There's time you got to pray, and that's an act's an action. It can really become passive if you're not careful. Because, I'm praying for it. That means I don't need to take an action step. No. Instead of remaining home and just praying just to get what she wanted to happen, she went out and worked for her food rather than just being a leech and a layabout saying like, well, I made it all the way here, Naomi, but I'm not feeling it today. No, like, she knew she had to do something. And that's what gets Boaz to go above and beyond the call. Like, the law says to look out for these people. It doesn't say you have to give them extra. It doesn't say you have to give one specific person this and that. Like, no, he saw who she was, what she did, and he said, you give her more, and don't you dare tell her not to take it.
Yeah, real quick. Fire shots on the more progressive Christians. I feel like I get to do that easier than everybody else. One of the things I actually hate is when people point to this like, oh, well, this is just, propping up male culture, male dominance, and talking about how like, oh, well, Ruth isn't really, an empowered woman. She's submissive, and we need that's, the Bible's still sexist because it's not. The Bible pretty much only highlights submissive people, male or female. And that's where I'm like, that's kind of the point. If we were in the New Testament, I would make our conservatives mad when they were like, oh, wives submit, see? Yeah, that's immediately followed with serve your wives as Christ serves the church unto death. So, dude, it's all about submitting. I don't care what gender you are. It's all about humility. That's the point. Bible is never prompting up someone to be the big, vast superhero Samson. Samson's ending isn't great.
He brings it on himself. God allows him to work despite it, as I've covered a while back. Anything else before we move forward and finish off today?
No, just playing off of what Josh said, like the Levitical priests were quite literally the housewives of ancient Israel. Like when you read the description of what they did, it's like you're in charge of everything that's baked in the pan. And it's like, could you have come up with a more domestic description of a job than that, God? and you applied it like right to the men folk. So I mean, like, yeah, it's just one of those things where like no matter where you come from, whether you're coming from a more conservative or a more fundamentalist or a more liberal or just wrong area of reading the Bible, right? We all have what I would call a systematic theology that we bring to the Bible that must be deconstructed so that we can all construct lives and viewpoints that are actually faithful to King Jesus. No one is exempt from the camp of deconstruction. That is quite literally the call of the gospel. Hey, this castle of sin has to be torn down brick by brick. Not one stone can be left standing. Even the stuff that you think is good needs to be re-examined in you all the time. No one's exempt from that. It's not just for the group of people that you subjectively think are wrong. Put yourself at the front of the line and don't give yourself an estimated time of departure.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't laughing at you, Karai. I'm just laughing because I just said literally something very similar to that when we did the recording for Church Hurt.
Oh, no.
And it's just like,
Wednesday.
It's almost like, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. I'm not,
yeah.
Someone else thinks the same way.
And now that I'm a guest, I'll add to it a little bit too, is the, don't be afraid of deconstructing anything. Guess what? Deconstruct that. Ask questions about whether he's real or not. He's big enough, he can handle it. He's a big boy, I promise. And two, I think the things that are most true when you go to question it and like, oh, dude, deconstruction, is that really real? Things that are most true, you found even more true and even more beautiful than you realized. There's no reason to ever fear or question anything if it's true.
That's why I always say, doubt well, question well. There's a way to doubt stupidly, poorly.
Mhm.
There's a way to do it right.
Yeah. Like, poorly, example, when Christian Ashley watches The Last Jedi. He does that poorly. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. If that's the entrance exam to heaven, I guess I'm going to hell. 17 through 23, we'll finish off today. So she gleaned in the field until evening, then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah. That's about 3/5 of a bushel, 22 liters, for people who care about math, of barley. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest." And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
Man, the kinsman redeemer creates safety in an otherwise violent world. What a type for our Messiah. Oh my gosh, bro.
No, but this doesn't deserve to be in the Bible, right? Don't you understand? It's so short and has nothing to do with anything.
Listen, Christian, religious or not, Bible or not, fantastic short story. Like, it was just so well written. But I'm just going to be a loser for a minute. And this isn't even religious commentary. This is man, this is where the love story gets good. This is where it starts to feel relatable. I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, callbacks to me and my granny when I was in middle school, high school, being like, I think this girl likes me. She did this. She told me not to go to the field. Or granny be like, oh no, you need to go talk to that girl. Or I remember when I started dating my wife, talked to some of my cousins, and it's that whole she kissed you. Was it on the cheek? Was it and I feel like that's what's going on here. She's like, he told me to go field with the others and not to go to another field. Oh, did he? I'm digging it. I love this.
Oh man.
That's so funny.
I'm sorry. I feel like I derailed us, but as a story, I'm I love this. I'm getting it. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Romance is a part of this story, and if you neglect it, you're neglecting what God is trying to say about this. And we'll get into issues of what may happen in 3 or not later on when we get there. But for right here and now, this is great. Notice these things. But for me, what I see is the change in Naomi based on the faith and humility of Ruth. That means a lot to me here. Because even in the midst of her own bitterness, in the midst of call me this, not that, she's able to see the grace of God in the actions of Boaz, God's servant, and rightfully attributes God as one who doesn't forsake the living or the dead. By the standards, once again, of the ancient world, they should both be dead. There's no man to take care of them, or they'd probably have to go into something like prostitution or slavery just to keep themselves alive. This is astounding. And Naomi has recognized, oh, you haven't forsaken me, but also you haven't forsaken my husband and my sons. You've looked after them even after they've died to bring us to this point. And that in itself is a very amazing thing. Just like God himself will do for his own people, he's not going to leave them alone.
Yeah. That's, do love that it talks about living in the dead. And I have some gripes with stuff like Dustin said, but one of my favorites, when he talks about the seen and unseen church, he talks about including those who've gone before us. The Bible talks about we're one in Christ, talks about the church. It doesn't say those who are alive currently are part of the church. That's all of them. So and this is why I like liturgy. It's why I like saying the Apostles' Creed. It's when I say it, I don't feel like I'm just saying it with everyone else around the world at the same time. It's all the people who've gone before me who said the Apostles' Creed. Even C.S. Lewis. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. For that moment, I feel so united in the church. That's why I love church unity. I think that's what it's really all about. So I love that she's calling that out here. And there's some ideas that are like so progressive for me that I think they're like a little too out there. One of them being like this whole like divine consciousness thing, but like part of me still is like, yeah, we are held in the consciousness of God in a really tangible way of like, yes, I am not crazy thinking that my grandparents are still out there around the world somewhere I'm thinking, but I still think they're in God, and that when I'm in God, I'm with them, and I think that matters. And I love that that's here, and that you pointed it out because I forgot because I got wrapped up in all the love story, and I'm like, oh, this part gets good. I derailed myself.
Well, that's why we got to look out for each other.
Yeah,
go ahead, Brian.
It's like when you get to the end of like any Assassin's Creed game after the first one, and the music swells. Maybe Ezio's theme, if that's your thing, is just banging through your speakers, and like the shadows of every assassin that's come before just like fills the screen. Like, bro, that's the church right there, man. You know, like doesn't matter the nationality, bro. We all hooded up into blood, bro. It don't matter, bro.
Killing heretics with their hidden blades, as God intended.
Just saying, bro. The only culture I know is pop. That's how I preach.
It's good stuff.
I would say my last point here, and feel free to pick up after this on something else you guys noticed, is that Boaz is proclaimed by Naomi as one of their family redeemers. Obviously, this will be more important later, but it's also yet another sign of God's love for Israel as a whole, and Naomi and Ruth in a moment. Just like the gleaning in the fields, this was set up forever ago, so it can pay off here and the countless other times it's never once mentioned. Showing the great love of God for his people. And as well, like Joshua, I was going to pick up the romance part here, but that's fine too. Like, look, whether they've fallen for each other here or not, or Boaz has feelings, Ruth has feelings, the other doesn't, or both do. And it's like a will they, won't they kind of scenario. Like, it could be fun. Like, we don't know. It doesn't really focus on that. But we do need to look at this in a romantic lens before that happens, because, I mean, we've read the story. Sorry, it's 3,000 years old. Like, sorry, spoilers. And that's an important part of this, is God showing how much he cares for this soon-to-be couple before they even engage in anything close to romance yet.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to go back to the empty fullness stuff, too. Like, I think one of the things, like you watch like a good show, movie or whatever, and like some little detail comes out where one of my things of the one Marvel presentation, Werewolf by Night or whatever it was, it's all black and white except for the one thing. So then at the very end, when everything has color, that visual, that you're like, it has meaning, it has like this impact, right? And like some shows will do stuff where you'll see something in the background and suddenly grows more and more and more. Story I really like, Jimi Hendrix did a comic on C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and there's less and less color as the story goes on until a certain event happens, and then the color is back, and it's like, oh, the visual effects were cool. And I think you're doing this in the short story of where we're starting off with famine. So they don't have a family, everything's empty, and the food is the visual here. We see as God does something with food back in Israel, and I want to be careful, we're not saying prosperity gospel. That's not always where we see God moving, but it's a good visual for the story. So they go back to Israel. She starts working in the field. There's barley. There's more food. She gets more food than the rest. And I think this is where we're seeing that on a spiritual level being represented by this physical thing happening. They're being more and more filled. They started off empty and famine, and they're finding more and more of that fulfillment in God. And where Ruth's finding that is in relationship, ordinary relationship. Mother-in-law, boyfriend, maybe, husband, potentially. And I think that's one thing important for us all to remember, going back to Tolkien again, is like, man, it's not always in the big temples or some big heroic action. Sometimes God is just when you're talking to your mother-in-law and hanging out with your future spouse or something,
What's that?
It really should not surprise us as much as it does that beings that are made in God's image can be conduits of God. That should not be as surprising to us as it is every single time. Because it surprises me too, but it's like, man, we're such silly creatures. Why does it surprise us that sometimes when God sparks up the right situation, we actually can, in Christ, definitely live up to the potential of our creation?
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, thank you both for your time. Hopefully be able to have everyone along for Ruth 3 and 4. I need to send out feelers for 1 Samuel at some point in time too, because we'll be done with Ruth next time. Shockingly, with a very short book, only 4 chapters. But go ahead, Joshua. Where can the good people find you? They need more Joshua Noah in their life.
I mean, all over the place. I have an episode I'm supposed to be editing for Be Living Water, my show, like Christian Taoism show. Whole Church Podcast, obviously. Christian will be on this week. So go to there Wednesdays. This is my Geekology. Christian and I are on a lot. I don't know. Just all over the place, man. Go to the Amazon Podcast Network and then pick some shows. And if Christian or me are on all of them, except for like 4, probably. There's like 4 or 5 that don't have Christian.
Karai, where can the good people find you?
Spotify, Apple, just punch in the Foreign Saints podcast. On YouTube, just punch in Foreign Saints and look for the red background with the modern looking dove. Especially if you like more debatey stuff recently. We are approaching the end of our series beefing with the polygamous pastors, the poly pals. They are losing to me, Christian, and a housewife. It is the best thing under the sun right now. But yeah, that's where you can find me. If my zeal does not offend you too much.
It's like a modern stained glass deal. This looks awesome. I love this logo.
I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Yeah, that logo has like at least 20 different versions sitting on my hard drive. I could not decide between any of them. I just kind of settled with that just because, I'm in the 21st century. That felt most appropriate. Felt most apropos.
Also, all of your like images for the videos look really cool. Sorry, I think I've heard you on like podcasts. I don't think I've seen the YouTube page. I'm hitting subscribe right now.
Hey, I appreciate it, big dog. I was gonna reach out to Christian to be like, yo, like how can I get this suave gentleman on my show, bro? How can I make that happen?
Email. This sounds fun.
Yeah, man, because I think you and I would have some really great conversations just about whatever.
Definitely.
About whatever.
Crossover you've been asking for. You demanded.
Man, it's going to be so good. Yeah. But yeah, looking forward to it, Josh. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Too.
Perfect. All right. So guys, thank you all for what you do. Please, if you get a chance, to leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. Help us with the ratings there. Help us find more people. Feel free to share the show with your family members and friends. If you're interested in my own fiction writing, you can find my work at starfightwritersguild.com or on Amazon by searching for the name MC Ashton. If you are interested in some further solid studies into the Bible and its teachings, then check out the other members of the NSL Ministries podcasting network. You can find me specifically on Systematic Geekology, Why I Don't Like, Friday Night Frights, Spidey Swing Bys, and some joyful noises. You can contact me at letnothingmoveyouPodcast@gmail.com. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Joshua Noel for the editing that he does and for the music he has to the podcast. And with all that in mind, God bless you in accordance to his will and not mine. And allow me one more time to remind you, let nothing move you.